Okay, welcome, Katherine. Thank you so much for coming on Spotlight with Kat Siggers today. I'm very excited. We've just had like a pre-interview chat, and I'm very excited to have another Katherine on. It's kind of made my day, my week maybe. But I think let's just jump straight into it. And of course, you've been in shows like Shadowhunters and Arrow, and you played like really strong women. How did you kind of prepare for those roles?
It's really interesting because I think growing up, I always looked for those characters. You know, Mulan and Pocahontas were my favorite Disney princesses growing up, and it's always been something that we didn't always see in media. It was here and there always, but it was few and far between. And then this new kind of resurgence of finding those characters more often in television specifically kind of happened around the early 2010s, and I was so thrilled and so honored to kind of be a part of that resurgence in a way. After so many incredible actresses paved the way for so many years, but it's sort of twofold. I come from a family of very strong women, and I always say that they're my biggest inspiration. They're all, not only are they incredible, mothers and sisters and cousins and all of that, but they're also incredible career women. And it's, growing up for me, it was never, you have to choose whether you want career or family. You can have whatever life you want. You just have to be willing to work for it. And I think that informed a lot of what I did moving forward. They're also the strongest and most incredible women I've ever met in my life. But also, I did a lot of fight training. During our first couple seasons of Shadowhunters, our stunt coordinators, Darren McGuire and his whole group of the McGuire brothers, they trained myself and a few of my other co-stars 3 to 5 times a week in boxing and weapons work, in stunts, in wire work, and everything that we'd have to do on the show, so that by the time we, not only did it keep us in shape, but by the time we got to doing these things on set, we largely did most of our own stunts and fighting on the show. And I've been able to carry that through moving forward into other jobs that I've done, and it's just really been this lovely kind of fortuitous circle.
Yeah, I mean, you've done so much action. You really, really have. Like, I am so impressed. Whenever I watch you on screen, I'm like, damn, I wish I could do that. Like, so did you have any like kind of fight training beforehand as an actor, or was it just going on to those shows?
I was a dancer growing up, so picking up movement, I'm very aware of like my body, and I'm good at picking up movement and choreography, as it were. But I did fencing for a year growing up, but it's entirely different than anything I did. It's truly, I owe it all to Darren and his team. They taught me everything I know. I showed up on Shadowhunters. I didn't know how to hold a sword. I didn't know how to throw a punch. I didn't know how to do anything. And by the time we were, about halfway into they joined us in season 2. So by the time I was about part of the way through season 2, I was doing almost everything myself, and have continued to this day. I did, a few years ago, I did this action movie called Air Force One Down, where I played a Marine who was in the Secret Service and a bunch of stuff. 5 huge fight scenes in that film. And I think every single shot is me except about like 6 shots in the movie, because of this training that I had and being able to keep it up and having the resources to do so with different people that I've met along the way in different cities. They wouldn't let me go through a wall or get hit by a car or go through the floor or jump off the roof, or there's an aerial stunt in there that I'm not a gymnast necessarily. So they had, a professional do that to make my character look very fancy and cool. But the rest of it's all me. And it's especially when the characters that I've played, so much of who they are is their physicality and is the way that they fight and move and move through these chapters of the story. It means a lot that people have put that trust in me to be able to do that.
Definitely. I mean, do you wish you could have done all of the stunts? I mean, of course, it's like a danger to your life, but do you kind of wish you could have done them?
I mean, I always ask, but a lot of times.
Oh, do you?
Oh yeah. I begged them to let me get hit by the car and to jump off the roof. But in retrospect, I'm very glad I didn't, because my incredible stunt double broke the windshield of the car. So
Ooh, that's gonna hurt in the morning.
Yeah. And truly, even though that I do a lot of my own stunts and a lot of my own fight work, I have the utmost respect and the best time on the planet with the stunt teams and my stunt doubles specifically. I mean, on Shadowhunters, my stunt double, her name is Mary Beckers. who has her own martial arts school and all these other incredible things. And she moved like a fighter. I did not. I moved like a dancer. I had to untrain a lot of things that had been, put into my body for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I had to kind of unlearn a lot. And the way that Clary moves in the end became sort of an amalgamation of the two of us. I learned to move more like her. She learned to move more like me. And we met somewhere in the middle. And so much of who Clary is, I owe to her.
Yeah. I mean, because as a dancer, you'd be very placed, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Posture,
Very placed.
and yeah, you can't really fight, can't really box like this. Looks sort of old English boxing. Learning to slouch and learning to turn my leg at different angles that I was told was, not allowed growing up. It's a whole other world.
Yeah, it's cool that you found like that amalgamation though between the two of you guys.
Yeah. It worked out, and I was lucky because I got to learn to fight as Clary did throughout the story, and so that helped. But when I jumped in on Arrow, my first day of shooting, I was doing a 3-minute cage fight against a 6'4" stuntman. So there's not really time to have your character learn how to fight in that scenario. Also, playing the daughter of Stephen Amell as Oliver Queen, we've seen him fight for seasons on the show by this point in season 7, and I had a lot to live up to.
Yeah, but you definitely nailed it, and in my opinion, anyway.
Thank you.
So going kind of from Shadowhunters and Arrow, then you went into Walker Independence. Now, it's a Western, but it's also like a crime drama. I mean, how was that shift? Was it similar to the stuff you'd done, or did it feel like a complete transition?
Yes and no. I mean, I think character-wise, Abby Walker is similar to some of the other characters I played in that she's a woman who doesn't fit the mold that people try and place her into. Particularly in that time period, women didn't have the autonomy and the agency that she finds herself with out of this terrible tragedy. And whereas most people would have crumbled under her situation, she instead chose to use it as an opportunity to make a life of her own choosing. But I think, so much of that backbone that she has and that tenacity, I was used to playing. I think there's a lot of that in me as a human. So I tend to end up with these characters that go through something terrible and have to, rise like a phoenix from the ashes, as it were. But I think there was a fair few moments where I coming from shows where I wore a leather jacket, jeans, and combat boots to work every day, or a super suit, let's say, I was suddenly in a 25-pound dress and a corset and little tiny shoes going, oh, I have to learn how to be a lady now and walk in a dress and do all of these other things. And I will never forget this one moment. Larry Tang, who was an executive producer on our show and one of our best directors that came through, we love him so much. He's like the godfather of everything the Walker Independence was. We were doing a scene in the pilot where I was kind of walking through the streets about to go shoot somebody or think I was going to shoot somebody. And he yelled out across the set, you can't walk with that much swagger. You gotta walk like a lady. And I was like, all right. Yeah, I'm walking like Mia again in this 25-pound dress, and this does not work. It does not play for the time.
Is that when your dance kind of background came in, though?
It actually is. I will say there's a lot of the sort of grace in but even just wearing a corset, we were so lucky. Our incredible costume designer, Marion Toy, and her team, she had an actual costume historian on the team who was a corset maker. And so all of our corsets were custom made, which saved our rib cages and internal organs a whole lot of strife. But just even putting on that corset, you move differently. You hold yourself differently. And that's part of the reason I chose to wear a corset throughout the show, is because I didn't want to, be in a scene as the character doing that acting, but then also acting like I'm wearing a corset on top of that. It's like, no, let's just do the thing. Because I will say it informed so much emotionally of what she was going through, especially in a lot of the, the heightened moments of the show when you're breathing and everything else is constricted. It adds another level of panic almost to everything else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've only ever worn a corset once. Well, once for a period when I was doing Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, it was so suffocating. But it also, I was playing Bathsheba Everdeen. And oh my God, did it add to the drama of it all? Like, it makes you, because when you're upset anyway, your breathing gets constricted. So the fact that your breathing is already constricted, I totally feel you.
Yeah.
Totally feel you.
It
Oh
was
my
a
God.
wild journey. There were so many times in scenes where I'm going, oh, I understand why women of this time were, heightened or perturbed, or
Yeah.
something was just extra frustrating. It's like, because
Yeah.
everything you're wearing, you can't move properly. Even the
No.
shoes, they're not made to help to be comfortable or to help you move properly. They're, if
No.
anything, made to inhibit all of that.
All of it. No
Yeah.
wonder we were so constricted in how
Yeah.
we were as women. I mean,
Yeah.
that's for a whole nother conversation. But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
totally hear
But
what
it
you're
is
saying.
interesting, just even if talking prep, I was doing research for Walker Independence, and I found this amazing book called Frontier Grit. That's all these stories of women on the frontier that have been collected from all different sources. And just the tenacity and the humor and the willpower that a lot of these women had, but also corsets, little known fact, saved hundreds of lives, probably thousands of lives, because arrows and other things that were used as weapons in that time bounced off of whalebone. Little useless
No
fact of the day.
way.
Yeah. So people were
I
so
love that.
confused because all these arrows were just bouncing off of these women's torsos, and whereas everyone else was dying around them.
And they're just walking off like, yeah, it's fine. It's because of the corset. Yes, I can't breathe right now, but at least I'm alive.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's bring it back to Shadowhunters now, because obviously that is something that you are, you're very, very well known for that. I loved the series personally. So are you still in contact with your co-stars? Because you had such great chemistry on screen. Like, have those friendships are they still ongoing?
Absolutely. I mean, not only do we see each other at Comic-Cons multiple times a year, still, we're so grateful that the fandom is still very much going strong. And, it's a real testament to the community that the fans created around this story. And, it changed all of our lives for sure. And the fact that we still get to be a part of that in some ways is beautiful. But yes, in fact, I was actually texting with Matt and Dom as I was logging into this call. But I've done about 4 movies with Matt since we wrapped Shadowhunters. We're developing some things together with Dom, as, social media has seen. But there's definitely a huge, like, Isaiah and Harry are still the people that I go to for advice on things. And, Alberto and Dom were the coaches of our softball team during the strike. It's this. There's so much of our worlds that just interconnect and intertwine still, and I love nothing more than running into, or staying in touch with the cast, even our crew, because we had a lot of the same crew for 4 years in Toronto, and I still get text messages from the camera crew or pictures from sets where they run into each other that they're still working on. And it's really a testament to the spirit that somehow developed on set and then extended out into the world of the fandom.
That's so lovely. Do you have a favorite memory from filming Shadowhunters?
I mean, there's so many. The one that I think sort of carries on to what we were talking about a little bit was we found out that the show was being canceled after we'd finished shooting season 3, and Freeform and Constantine and all of them were kind enough to let us come back and shoot sort of a 2-episode TV movie, as it were, to wrap up the story. And our whole crew came back, our whole cast came back, and the last day of shooting, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the whole series, we were shooting the big wedding that happens at the end between 2 of the characters. And so everybody was there. Almost every guest star we'd ever had, every recurring character we'd ever had, if they were still alive in the universe, they were somehow at this wedding. And so it was really kind of cathartic for all of us. We got a way to kind of say, bid farewell to the show as well as to each other in that sense. But our wrap party was on the set. And so everyone went to go change. And I'll never forget, I was one of the last ones to leave the set before, starting the party. And something stopped me like a brick wall right as I was about to step off the set. And I realized that it was the last time I was going to be on set as Clary. And I still get emotional talking about this. It's so silly. It's 7 years later. I still get emotional.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But it had been such a big chapter of my life. And it had brought so many beautiful people and so much growth as a person and an artist. And it just made me really grateful. And then coming back to the party, we were there till 7 a.m. the next morning, and everybody stayed. And you know how wrap parties go. Usually not everyone stays for the entire time. our whole crew was still there, our whole cast was still there. Everyone was bouncing back and forth between the sets and hanging out and like toasting different things. And it really just showed what a family we all had become for that period of time.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I wish we were in a studio together right now because I would totally be giving you a hug. I love that it's made such a big impact on your life, not only through the character, but also through just the community that it sounds like was kind of created around that. Why do you think it was so impactful for the whole cast and crew?
I think a lot of it came from, well, we were very lucky. We had, Isaiah, who's been in the industry forever, Isaiah Mustafa, and Harry Shum Jr., who'd just come off of Glee, who had been a part of these sort of big, epic productions in the past. And they sat us down when we went to our first cast dinner, just us kids, to get to know each other. And they sat us down and they said, look, we have the potential to be here for a long time. And this can either be a great experience or this can be a terrible experience. So let's choose to make it a great one. And from that point forward, we all just collectively decided to have each other's backs and to be there for each other and be each other's support system. And that ended up extending to the crew. We were also very lucky to have an amazing, production manager and incredible executives who and showrunners who helped kind of foster that as well. And I've got to say, I've never been a part of a set that is so egoless and collaborative. I mean, we had our props department built us around, like literally a round table on wheels that they would wheel to every set for our cast chairs, because we'd all be, doing work or eating or whatever it may be. And around that table inevitably would be a wardrobe designer and a props designer and one of the stunt team and the writer of the next episode and the director of the next episode. And suddenly all these conversations would be happening of, oh, we've got this story point and I'm making this wardrobe. Oh, let me give you this, thing from the art department to put on it. And oh, I've got a stunt person coming in who specializes in this weapon. And oh, the props department is suddenly volunteering to make it. And then, the writer is getting an idea based on that. And everyone is just sharing resources and ideas in a way that is so beautifully cohesive. But for me personally, I was 19 when I was cast as Clary, barely 19. And I finished the show when I was 23. And that's a huge chunk of your life that's so formative to who you become as a person, that I am just so eternally grateful to have had that cast and that crew around me at that time to going through, when you're doing a show like that, it's long and it's hard and it's intense and you're exhausted all the time because you're either fighting or crying or usually both. And you really see each other at your best and your worst, from set to press tours to junkets to Comic-Cons to anything and everything in between. And you become family. And it's really beautiful. And I was so lucky to have those people at that time and to still have those people in my life.
Oh gosh, it makes my heart swell when actors talk about productions like that, because not every set is like that. I love that you had that experience, especially as you came into it, like you say, in your formative years. It sounds like it set you up in such a nice way for the future.
It is something I try and take to every set. You can't always dictate how a set runs or how it functions, but I've been fortunate to be in the position to sort of set the standard of how people treat each other on a set at the very least. And I always try and bring that in as much as I possibly can.
Because the thing is, when you collaborate and when you share and when you become like a family, like, become a whole community, it's like the show is going to be better because of that. Whereas if there's that tension, like it's not as nice of experience. And then it's like, what is going to happen to the future of the show because of, potential conflicts and stuff like that. So I think it's really great. Let's talk about, I cannot have you here and not talk about Mia Smoke. So how did you make this character your own, and did you draw inspiration from anything?
Absolutely, I did. And actually, funny enough, I did not know that I was auditioning for the daughter of Oliver and Felicity until long after I had booked the part. So a lot of times on sets, for those who don't know, when they're casting a character that they want to keep secret, they will issue what they call dummy sides, where it's, a fake made up character that's kind of similar in a situation that's kind of similar, but not the same. And so that's what this audition was. It was for a rookie cop with a dark past. Cool. Sounds like Arrow.
Okay.
And so I did one audition. It happened to be over a holiday weekend. So they just sent my tape around, found out I'd booked the part. So I started researching, different training that cops go through and all the different things that I would need to know and need to be able to do. And I'd been doing this for a couple weeks. And then I get a call from Beth Schwartz, who was our showrunner at the time. And she goes, "Hey, congratulations. I'm so happy you're on the show. We're really thrilled to have you. Everything you know is a lie. You are Oliver and Felicity's kid." Okay, great, thanks. And I was like, whoa, hold on. I'm sorry. First of all, please say that again. Second of all, I have so many questions. And because with Shadowhunters, there's always these lists of like most beloved couples on shows, and Magnus and Malik from our show had been on a lot of those lists. So I'd always seen Oliver and Felicity. I'd seen all this, fan love and how beloved they were and what high esteem they were held to, mostly because of, Stephen and Emily's incredible work and all the effort they put into crafting that relationship. But when I heard that, I knew that I had big shoes to fill, and I definitely had to make sure I did it right and did justice to that, because people held that relationship so dear, and I was the physical product thereof. But it made it really fun for me as an actor, because I had at the time 6 seasons of both of them to watch and analyze and go through. And as I learned little bits about Mia as they were writing her, I got to go, okay, so what qualities, good and bad, of Oliver and Felicity can I steal and can I take? And what can I put together that would make an interesting person that might be the product of these two? So, I stole Emily's sense of humor, and I stole Oliver's walk, and I stole all these little tiny things from each of them. And as they wrote the character, I think the writers kind of picked up on that, because they wrote me the most beautiful storyline, and I'm so grateful that they took such wonderful, beautiful care of me on that show. And it was something that especially because she's not a book from she's not a character from the comics. There are some that are loosely similar, but she's not canon in the DC comic universe. And so I was really nervous as to what people were going to think. And I was very grateful at the warm reception I was given, because all of us collectively put a lot of work and a lot of effort into making sure we did justice to what we were kind of representing with Mia.
Yeah. I think it's lovely that you had, well, first of all, that you were so surprised. I mean, what a lovely surprise that was to have be in such a great character when you thought you were just coming in for a cop, like mind blown, like brilliant. But it's also so lovely that you were able to have those two people that you could kind of amalgamate in a way, but then put your own spin on it. Exactly. I mean, that's every actor's dream, because normally we have to go, okay, I'm going to make up this whole backstory about this person who has had this life, who I know absolutely nothing about. But you had the privilege of having little inklings of what this character of Mia possibly could be.
Well, and also too, I got to play out so much of the backstory. We did a whole episode that was a flashback of, how Mia got to be Mia and what her life was up until that point. And then, getting to work with the beauty of differing timelines on the DC universe and time travel. I got to work with both Emily and Stephen throughout the process. And, they were so wonderful and so welcoming to me. And then going through the process of seeing my super suit on the wardrobe board one day and going, oh, are we doing this now? And, getting to be a part of the crossovers and getting to kind of go through and kind of sculpt her whole journey and take on the mantle of the Green Arrow and play that forward even after Arrow was finished. It really became another thing that, as when it's based on source material, it becomes really special to so many people. But when you're playing a superhero, there's certain elements to what that superhero represents and what the Green Arrow means and what that is in the world and what his or her place is in the world. And it's an actor's dream, really, because you have so much to pull from and so much to work with and such a rich backstory of all kinds of dark, twisty things to just dive into. It's great.
Do you prefer playing characters that have kind of that darker side to them?
I will say it's definitely more fun.
Yeah.
Whether it's, a hero with a dark past like Mia, or a hero who enters a dark world like Clary, or just someone who's terrible and awful and the scourge of the earth like Julie Lowry from The Stand. It's definitely fun to get to dive into a psyche that's not your own, and to have to learn to understand someone in that way. And to be someone so different than who you are. That's why I love my job, and why I love what I get to do for a living, is I get to try and figure people out. I have the A to Z of the script, and it's my job to figure out the how and the why. And trying to understand someone who I, on the surface, don't understand at all is a challenge, but it's the fun of it.
It's definitely the fun of it. I love playing other than myself.
Yes.
Like, it's much more interesting to delve into, because you have to totally learn, why did that person do what they did? What was the reason behind that? So yeah, I think that's really cool. So you've been part of 2 big fandoms now, the Arrowverse and Shadowhunters. Would you like to join Marvel, or maybe even Star Wars? Like, is that something you'd like to do?
All of the
Or
above.
both?
Yes, all of the above. Yes, give me Doctor Who. I love the world of fandoms, because it's just, there's a magic to it. There's a magic to this collective storytelling that we do on set or on stage or whatever it may be. But then the fact that that collective storytelling can then extend to the world, and people can be as excited about these stories and as dedicated to these characters as we are, being the ones that pour the literal blood, sweat, and tears into making these characters who they are. It's such a beautiful unifying power that these kind of fantastical stories can have. And I got a little taste of it in Maze Runner way back before Shadowhunters, and then moving forward through all of this, it's something that I always look for. And I loved fantasy books growing up. I'm still reading fantasy books, just because the mythology is so fascinating, and just thinking about the rules of a world that work in a different way. And it's why I play Dungeons and Dragons. It's why I love all of these worlds. You just get to be so creative and have so much agency with, well, how would this be? Because this doesn't really happen, or does it? So why not dive in?
That's the question we have to ask ourselves every day. I mean, where did it come from originally? That's what I always think.
Exactly.
How did you have the thought? If you've got the thought, it can be a thing.
How do we all have the collective thought?
Exactly. So if you was in Star Wars, I think I might already know the answer to this question, but which side would you choose, Jedi or Sith?
I mean, that's tough. There is so little bits about the Clone Wars cartoons, and there are some Sith Jedi witches that would be so fun to play, honestly. But also, I think wherever I would end up in Star Wars, even like Andor is my favorite iteration of Star Wars, other than the original. And they're kind of in that morally gray area, which I find so fascinating. So whatever aspect of the world you end up in, I don't think you can lose. I mean, put me in a stormtrooper outfit. I don't care. I just want to be in Star Wars once.
I think we all do, to be
right?
fair.
I volunteer as tribute. Wait, that's another one.
It's like, how many fandoms are we going to go through today? Many, many, many.
All of them. Okay, bring it on.
All of them. All of the above. Right, before we let you go, I've got one more question. Okay, I want to know, and I'm sure everyone else does, what is next for you? Any hints about any upcoming projects? Anything you can share with us?
I've got a few things. I was very lucky to be kind of very busy over the last year. I did a film with Matt Daddario. I did a great film that's kind of an adventure, very National Treasure, Outer Banks kind of film that we shot in the Dominican Republic with some incredible actors, and it was really a magical process that far exceeded anything that I thought it could be. I mean, when you have a location like the Dominican Republic, it just increases your production value exponentially. I've done a few other rom-coms this year. I just did a great rom-com with Alexander Ludwig, who I adore, and is, again, another creative kindred spirit in so many ways. But I'm also developing my own things. Matt Daddario and I have been hard at work over the last couple of years with Dom Sherwood on some of these projects, and we have a film of our own that we are putting together as quickly as we can because we're dying to get it on its feet. But as everyone in the entertainment industry knows, that happens a lot more slowly these days.
Yes.
But it's great to kind of have that agency and sit in the producer's seat or the director's seat or whatever it might be moving forward, and have a little bit more scope of the ways in which you can tell a story and the ways in which you can creatively influence how a story is told.
Because I think it's such a beautiful process when that happens, and I look forward to I'll be following your journey for sure.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is there any last comments you want to say before we finish up for today?
I would just say the biggest thank you to everyone who's, watched things from Arrow to Maze Runner, Shadowhunters, everything before and since. It's so amazing to go to these Comic-Cons and get to meet people and hear their stories and hear what they connect with or how they found this or the friends they've met because of it. And in a world that is so divisive and seems to continue to get more so, I'm just so grateful for those moments where we can all just feel as though we're one big community. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm sure everyone out there will be thanking you too. You've been wonderful. Thank you for coming on, Katherine.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.